everybody, welcome to today's video. And today, I don't even know what I'm doing. Epic. Oh, wrong one. I don't know what. Sorry about that, guys. I dropped the camera. Because I'm a dummy.
Animal Antics A.
Oh my goodness.
Scott was just a little stinker. He had a super sniffer. He liked to help his parents cook squash soup. Sammy would sit on Papa's shoulders, and Papa would stir the... Sam, my man, what do you think? Papa would say. Sammy would sniff and sniff. Sometimes Sammy smiled. Mama and Papa knew what that meant. The soup was good. Sometimes Sammy scrunched up his face. Mama and Papa knew what that meant, too. Oh, Sammykins, Mama would say, what does the soup need? Then Sammy would point to something, and Mama would sprinkle it in the pot. Soon, Sammy was an honest-to-goodness soup expert. Before Sammy started school, his parents told his teacher all about his super sniffer. How useful, said his teacher, Alpha Betty. At recess on the first day, Sammy put his sniffer to work. Don't step there, he called out, and he pointed to some inky, stinky mud. Don't sit there, he cried, and he pointed to some icky, sticky sap. But when it was time for lunch, Sammy's super sniffer caused a problem. Alpha Betty led her class to the lunchroom. Students, I'd like you to meet Susie Horse. Susie is our new school cook. She'll be fixing tasty soups for our lunches. Susie served bowls of soup to everyone. Sammy sniffed his soup. He squinted his eyes, he scrunched up his nose, and he whispered, "Don't eat the soup." Susie Horse was not pleased. Is there a problem with my soup? She asked Sammy. I'm sorry, Susie, Sammy said. He took a small sip of his soup. Then he set down his spoon. I guess I'm just not hungry, he said. No one else seemed hungry either. Susie scowled. The next day, Susie served a different soup. All the students watched Sammy. He sniffed, he squinted his eyes, he scrunched up his nose, and he tried to swallow a big spoonful of soup. Suddenly, Sammy sneezed. Achoo! Soup spurted out of his mouth and his nose. I'm so sorry, Susie, said Sammy. He wiped up the soupy mess. Susie was silent as a stone, and her face was stormy. Alpha Betty tried to explain about Sammy's sniffer. Susie Horse still scowled. Then let Mr. Super Sniffer fix the soup, she said. Alpha Betty smiled. Would you like to try, Sammy? She asked. Sure, said Sammy, if it's okay with Susie. Susie's face still looked stormy. Okay, Mr. Super Sniffer, she said. Come back tomorrow morning during recess. When Alpha Betty took Sammy to the kitchen the next morning, he was shaking in his boots. Susie's face was stormier than ever. "Here's today's soup," Susie said. She pointed to a steaming pot. "What kind of soup is it?" Sammy asked.
There's whatever her name
"It's
is. I'm just
squash
kidding,
soup,"
alphabety.
said Susie. "It's made with squash and water." "Oh," said Sammy. "Sometimes I help my parents make squash soup. We add lots of stuff to make it super tasty." Susie squinted her eyes. "What sort of stuff?" she asked. "I'll show you,"
I'm just
said
kidding.
Sammy.
I'm just kidding.
He scooped up carrots, celery, onions, and apples. Susie fussed as she sliced and diced. "Apples in squash soup? I've never heard of such a thing." But Sammy
Me
was
neither.
just getting started. He said, "Shake in some of this and that. Sprinkle in some of these and those. Now smush it all together." Susie scowled as she smushed. "This isn't squash soup," she snapped. "This is a big sloppy mess." Sammy took a long, slow sniff, and he smiled a big smile. "Taste it, Susie," said Sammy. Susie looked disgusted, but she took a tiny sip. She didn't smile, but she didn't scowl either. Then she slurped up a large spoonful. The corners of her mouth twitched, and slowly Susie smiled a tiny little smile. "Morning recess is over, Susie,"
I
said
freaking love
Sammy.
this book.
"I'll
Even
see
though I
you at
just
lunch." Susie stared. Then she
Try to see
whispered,
if you can find my face in
"Thanks, Sammy." At lunch, Susie served big bowls of squash soup. Everyone's eyes were on Sammy. He sniffed, he tasted, and he smiled a big smile.
Hi.
Today, everyone was hungry.
Hi, everybody.
No one talked. The only sound in the lunchroom
Was
was
slurping.
slurping. Alpha Betty whispered in Susie's ear, "The soup is simply delicious."
Okay.
Susie sat down next to Sammy Skunk. "Will you bring your super sniffer to help me tomorrow, Sammy?" she asked. "Sure," said Sammy, and Susie smiled her.
Okay. That's for now, everybody. Bye-bye.